All right, welcome to Halitics Friday, free for all. Give me a call, please. 240-363-7190. Got some calls yesterday. People were watching or trying to watch. They were calling to tell me the live stream wasn't streaming. And then when I got them on, they're like, no, we don't need to talk to you. We just want you to know there's no live stream. So I was kind of bummed. I was like, well, I wanted to talk to you. Come on, call in. Love to talk to you. 240-363-7190. The free-for-all really is about you. Even more, I mean, I always take your call, but even more than usually, the free-for-all is your moment to weigh in on what I'm discussing. And that's what I think, that's what I believe makes this live stream, this program, Halitics, unique. You really don't get that from other shows, from other programs. You just don't. They're all about the pontifications of the hosts. And every now and then they might take a commentator or somebody calling in, and they're generally either a attaboy, keep it going, or an opportunity for the host to try to mock the caller. And if you've watched me interact with you, I almost never, ever do that. Even people I really strongly disagree with, even people who I think are trying to embarrass me rather than have a dialogue. I'm not about trying to embarrass you. I'm really not. This is for a learning experience. And one thing I've learned, by the way, is that I have to do a better job of not looking elsewhere than at you when I do my program. And in fact, yesterday, and I keep turning, and I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't do that. I got to stop doing that. But that was an issue yesterday. So I actually am working on some solutions to that problem. But it's really about you. And that's why I should be looking at you while broadcasting Halitics. Do want to thank the flurry of new subscribers who have clicked the little square, that white and blue square in the bottom right of the screen. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do. Please also click like and comment as well on my broadcast. So I said the two topics I'm going to lead with today are the class war. And it's really a class war now between elites, almost close to a class war between elites and the just about elites, right? The near elites. So it's within the upper brackets in general. And so we're going to talk about that. But I think what we need to do, and at the end, at the end of this segment, which could go on for some time, there is a solution, and that solution, I'm not going to enunciate it at this moment, but I mean, there's a general solution, and there's a somewhat more specific solution that I'll propose, but I'm going to flag it by noting that I think this particular tweet, I hope you can read it, by Nicholas Zettel, is really not the solution. I believe this tweet is actually problematic. And I think many of you, and I could be totally wrong, especially the California viewers, listeners, I think many of you may feel this tweet is spot on, right? That, if you have $1 million house, you're not middle class. And that's what Nicholas Zettel is saying. He's saying, hey, the argument by the Trib that the new mayor's mansion tax, and Brandon Johnson is a more progressive candidate who ran against a corporatist in the last election in Chicago. My organization at the time, Our Revolution, I no longer am employed. I'm no longer a staffer at Our Revolution, but I do have close ties to many of the people there and still do some work with them, but not a staffer. We did support Brandon Johnson. And the Trib is saying here, well, his plan for raising taxes will hit the middle class and hurt Chicago. Now, I am not going to criticize the mayor. I don't know what constraints he's under to have to try to raise some tax money. My suspicion, based on my experiences in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is quite a bit wealthier per capita, I believe, than Chicago, which is not a poor city, but Moco is one of the wealthier counties in America. My suspicion is that Mayor Johnson is under a lot of pressure. And we just saw our tax property go up, our property taxes here in Montgomery County to go up to pay for teachers' raises, teachers who really were, in absolute need of raises, and also just to fund the public schools. My suspicion is Chicago faces a very similar dynamic, and I actually give the mayor credit for targeting more expensive homes as opposed to just every home. I believe in Montgomery County, where I live, again in Maryland, the higher real estate tax, the higher property tax is going to be levied on every single residence that is privately owned. And I'm sure commercial real estate will also face a higher tax, although I'm not certain about that. It's better to only tax the more costly homes, right? Because if you have a more expensive house, you probably are more affluent, you probably can afford it. And also, we want to reduce inequities. We want to reduce inequality. And when you tax more expensive homes rather than less expensive homes, you do bring down a little bit inequality. There's a price you pay to live in a larger house in a more desirable area. You pay an additional cost, so that does tend to reduce inequality somewhat. So I give Mayor Brandon Johnson credit for targeting $1 million and higher homes for this new tax. And my suspicion is if your house is just over $1 million, you don't pay much, right? You probably only just pay that marginal amount that would be subject to tax. The amount between the value of your house, let's say it's a $1.5 million, so you'd pay the tax on that $500,000 that's above the $1 million. I don't know that for a fact either. New York State has a weird law where if your estate is over a certain amount, you have to pay tax on the entire estate, which is crazy, not just on the marginal amount of your estate that's over the minimum taxable amount. I don't think that makes sense. If you have a $10 million estate, you pay 16% on the entire $10 million. If you have a $5 million estate, you pay nothing. That doesn't make sense that you would have to pay on your entire estate. If you have $6 million versus $5 million, you pay on the $6 million. It's kind of crazy. It's a crazy setup. But I assume it's not like that in Chicago. It's irrational. That's an irrational style of taxation. $1 million sounds like a lot. And that's what Zettel is saying, Zettel Planning, and Zettel, who's a progressive, very progressive. He's saying middle class people can't afford $1 million homes. But in fact, I don't know whether middle class people can afford $1 million homes today. Right? If you are a middle manager, I mean, I don't know how would we define someone who's middle class? Someone who has a decent, salary. I would say right now you're probably close to six figures to be middle class, at least in large cities, at least six figures now. But you might not be able to afford that $1 million house. But people who have lived in a home for 30, 40, 50 years could definitely be what we would have called middle class in the 70s and the 60s and the 70s and 80s, and yet have a house that's worth $1 million because of inflation. It's not a special particular home. And I think this tweet is divisive. I think it's counterproductive because it's pitting people who really are struggling, often many people who are struggling economically, against each other. I think we have to aim a little bit higher when we start talking from below about a class war. And I would start looking at really going after people who are living in $2, $3, $4, $5 million houses or higher. People whose income is in the $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 range. There's such a huge split now between the richest Americans who have literally hundreds of billions of dollars, and poor, struggling, and working people who I would say are, generally 70, 80,000 below, but it could be higher. And some people who are making 50, 60,000 are living relatively well. So there's clearly wiggle room. There's clearly a gray area. I think that $1 million homeowner they often are in that gray area. And I actually did respond to this particular tweet, and I did get a nice answer from Mr. Zettel. So here is, let's see if we can get my response up here. I'm trying to, again, not look at the screen, look at you, not at my what do we call it again? My slide deck here that I'm sharing with you. But here was my response. In Chicago, $1 million doesn't necessarily buy you a mansion at all. Many truly middle-class homes are in that. By the way, you can see my dog Ginger there on the top left. She's my Twitter avatar, is my dog, the late lamented Ginger Burke Ginsburg, as we called her. So I'm just saying, hey, look, this is a townhome. This is $1 million house, 1.029. This is, I'm not going to say it's modest. It looks nice. It looks like it's a very nice leafy neighborhood, but it's not anything special. That's what $1 million buys you in Chicago today. And many of the folks who are living in that house, especially if they're a widow or an orphan, people who inherited the house don't have much of an income. They're not rich. They're just simply not. They may ultimately have a net worth of over $1 million, but being a millionaire today isn't what it used to be, A. And B, you could live in that house, even if you put 20% down and you just bought it. That's $200,000. Your equity is nowhere near $1 million in the house. So I think when we promote a class war, we have to be mindful that we're targeting people who really are living lavishly, who have money that is multi-generational, that their kids themselves aren't going to have to work. And it's not even that their kids could maybe scrape by. It's that their kids themselves can live a lavish lifestyle without working. To me, that is where really the ultimate financial elites start. And that's where we need to be. We need to reunite everyone below them. And I hope it wouldn't be that challenging. I really do. I hope it shouldn't be that challenging. Maybe it really, really is. Let's talk about specifics. And this is the free-for-all. So we're going to relate the program today back to previous ones this week. I did talk about a great article in The Intercept about how the next class war, and I'm going to show you a slide or show you a clip from that or whatever, screenshot, but how the next class war is between the billionaire class and the people just below it. I talked a little bit about that. Let's relate that to the current Hollywood strike, because I think this is a perfect example of how as they call it, the masters, is that what the Intercept article called them, the richest, the most powerful people, the masters of the world, are cracking down now on those who formerly were doing very well and had a legitimate expectation of perhaps making it into the elite classes themselves, at least some of them. And some always will, because just like you see from Silicon Valley, few people who have these Silicon Valley startups that go crazy, engineers, techies, and the like, may well hit the jackpot and get multi-generational wealth, just like a few movie stars and directors and people who have a certain kind of talent that is in great demand. So we are seeing in Hollywood right now a strike. And this is from the New York Times, and how TV writing became a dead-end job, from the New York Times. I think this is a really interesting piece, I want to highlight just different aspects of it with bigger imagery. So by this guy, Noam Scheiber, and this is a trend. It is not just, one particular position. This is a trend for white collar workers that we're seeing. Now, the trend for blue collar workers we've been seeing for well over 100 years. The article points out that by 1914, auto workers who previously were, pretty good upper middle class jobs with a lot of self determination, a lot of control over the workspace, were being ground down, and how Henry Ford led that. Now, ultimately, auto work became, again, a blue-collar job that could and did lead to middle-class life. That was because of the unionization movement. But previously, 20 years later, the union movement with the AFL-CIO and the UAW ultimately made union work middle class. And Ford himself did pay the workers a better salary, but he took away a tremendous amount of the autonomy that workers had in that role. So we're seeing it now writ large among white collar workers. Now, I'm not going to sit here and cry the blues for them. I'm not going to cry a river for the lawyers. The writers I do have more sympathy for. But, these are, again, people who, by and large, as far as I know, have not championed other workers, other working class people. Not all of them, and some have been great leaders, but many have not. And but whatever you did in the past, the reaper's coming for you now. The corporatists, the elites are coming for you now. They're coming to take away your autonomy. They're coming to take away your the pride you might have in your work, and just turning you into a grunt. So even in the past 15 years, we're seeing this transition in Hollywood from relatively fairly paid, relatively fairly compensated, interesting work to more and more discrete tasks performed just until that particular task is completed, and then you're out on your own. So here it is, current writer, Hollywood writer Jordan Harper, when he was writing for The Mentalist, was really involved in all aspects of the production, and he got to work for pretty much the whole year that they were in production for The Mentalist. But 9 years later, 5 years ago, with the Hightown, I don't know these programs, by the way. I think I've heard of The Mentalist. I think that was on network TV. I don't know anything about Hightown on Stars. Basically, his job is just to write. Probably write about one particular character, write one particular scene per episode, not even write an entire episode. And as soon as that season is completed, that Hightown season is completed, you're done for the year. You got to find another job. So much more ad hoc work, much more discrete, limited tasks, repetitive. Obviously, writing is creative, but the creativity begins and ends at the computer while you're on your word processor, while you're on your Google Doc. And it's also paid less. The compensation is down. So the work is getting crappier. I don't usually curse. I'll curse now. It's getting shittier. It just is. It sucks. This is what is befalling your TV writers, your movie script writers. And I feel, I said I don't have a lot of something. I do have something for them. They're not paid a lot. Many of them are making, well under what we would consider to be a middle class wage per year. So what can we do about it? Well, they are unionized. Many of them, the writers are unionized. They have the union guild, and they are doing what they can. But it's just not enough. That's just the way it is. They're trying. They're trying to keep them at least within a certain number of hours annually. Each show has to employ a certain minimum number of writers. At least that's what the Writers Guild wants. The studios are saying that's incompatible with the creative nature of our industry. And the actors themselves, not even writers now, actors are facing much shorter roles, just a few episodes, they're in, they're out, they're done, rather than continuing storylines that may last for years. And all of this is designed to reduce the payout. Because once a program becomes dependent on a particular actor, once an actor or a role becomes popular and people start writing in and wanting to see more of a particular actor or want to see more storylines involving a particular character, when that happens, that actor becomes much more able to leverage, right, their power. They have power. They actually can demand higher salaries. And that is the last thing that the producers want. The last thing the producers want. Now, I just would respond. The requirement that shows employs minimum number of writers, I don't like the micromanagement. I don't want creative people, the people with the idea, right? The idea people, the producers, the people who come up with scripts. I don't want them to feel like they have to employ a certain number of writers. I don't like that. I don't like the micromanaging. I think the way around this problem isn't telling the business what they have to do. It's guaranteeing everyone a decent life. Again, everyone has enough. No one has too much. So you tax the owners of the studios a lot more money. You guarantee everyone health care, period. It all comes out of the government revenues, out of taxes. And you make it easier for people to break into the industry. I think all of those would be better solutions than telling the business what it has or to do or can't do. But all that said, I certainly understand why the Writers Guild is doing what it's doing, and it's certainly sensible from their perspective. I think from our perspective, wanting an efficient society, the way to get there is to tax the wealthy at much, much higher levels and guarantee everyone enough. Also, antitrust. Let's have lots of smaller studios rather than a few big ones that do all the distribution and have all the power and control. All right, so more on the studios and about how we're seeing elites crack down and just take more and more power. And it's not just Hollywood, right? I mean, this is just the trend across the entire nation and really the whole world. So you see, I think you can read this, but maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. By the way, call in if you want, 240-363-7190. Please, I'd love to hear from you. That's why I do this, to talk to you. 240-363-7190. We are seeing these changes where work is being broken down, fractured into many and many smaller, more degraded, poorly paid jobs. And this is something we've seen across the board. In fact, the technocrats, the people with the what we now view as good jobs, right? Writing code, acting, writing scripts, all of them are facing what befell other workers, other employees in the past 100+ years. It's just a pattern that's continuing from blue collar into white collar with a vengeance. What do we do about it? Now, again, I do think it's important that we have unions that protect workers. I don't want to see too much oversight into how production companies, firms operate, I think the real solution is to give workers much, much more bargaining power. So they'll only take good jobs. They'll only take jobs that are interesting, that give them real potential, real future. And I think the way you do that, again, is you guarantee everyone enough and nobody has too much. Then if you're skilled, you're good at your job, you don't take a job if it's not worth it to you. Just say, forget it. I'll work here. I'll start my own. I'll work on my own. I don't need your crappy health care because I've already got great government provided health care. I don't need to work. I don't need $100,000 a year to send my kid to Cal because it's debt free, and since it's a state school. My kid can go there for nothing, for $100 a month or $100 a semester. I think that's a better solution. Let's give workers a lot more autonomy and the ability to come or go as they please without that economic terror. To me, that's the real way we address these problems. But we have to address them. Absolutely have to. And also tariffs. Make it here. Don't allow corporations the power to crush workers by offshoring. All right, again, we're seeing this issue everywhere. So not just Hollywood, not just Silicon Valley, not just auto workers. You see law firms. And these are the people I really don't have a lot of sympathy for. I said I don't have a lot of sympathy. These people are making so much money for so long, and all they're wanting is just the biggest piece of pie they can get. The ones in the corporate law firms. I guess, to be fair to them, some of those law grads really do graduate with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, and they have no choice. So I guess that is fair. But so you see it. The shift is it's fair to give them a pass, but fewer equity partners, more lawyers off the standard partner track, fewer tenured professors, fewer engineers in tech companies, wherever possible, cutting costs, cutting to the bone. It's tragic. It's absolutely tragic. This is the America you're bringing your children into. This is the America of your grandchildren, and it's an unhappy place. It's an unhappy place. I want to get real quick. So this is how, and sorry for that shaking there. This is how the Intercept article from just a few days ago concluded. The one that was talking about the new class war between the elites and those just between them. And as I stated before when I was quoting it, I had some issues. I'm not 100% on board with everything that's in this article, but there's a lot of wisdom. There's a lot in there that's worth contemplating. And the solution is the correct one. So, I can't remember the guy's name. Schwartz Cohen, I can't remember. Right now, we're just at the start of what will be a titanic war between the masters of mankind and the technocrats. All right, it's not the start. You just saw from that article how the 5 years ago at the latest, Hollywood was already clamping down. I wrote about this back in 2015, 2016 about those H1B1, HB1 visas, which are designed to bring in workers from Sri Lanka and India who speak English and who may have tech skills to replace American tech workers, with the idea that at some point they would have to go back to their home countries. They would never be able to make citizenship. So this is not the start. And in fact, this war's been going on forever. You could, back in 1910, the auto workers were technocrats. They had a skill set that made them professional. They had specialized skills, but it became very easy to break their jobs down into bite-sized chunks, where you could have one worker turn the wrench and another worker, I don't know, whatever, carry the assembly over to the line and then push it on the line and so forth, and have each person do one little job, another person put the windshield on the car, and that, rather than just see the vehicle as a whole and put it together bit by bit. So this is exactly what happened then, and it's happening now, and it's been going on. But what he does say, that 100%, the technocrats will likely be defeated, they are being defeated now, unless they can do something they've never done before, forge an alliance with the working class. And let me just say a flash to the technocrats. The associates at law firms, by the way, not just, people at Silicon Valley, the actors who are skilled, the writers who are skilled. You're working class now. You're working class. You don't have security. You could be discharged at any moment. You're working class. Only if you work together, if we don't allow ourselves to be divided by ethnic concerns, by cultural concerns, only if we ally ourselves economically with each other, can we possibly, I'm not saying we will, possibly defeat the billionaire class. And how do we do that? You know my answer, vote for Dr. West. Cornel West for president. He's the one guy running who gets this. He's the one guy running who isn't ultimately siding with the billionaire class. And that's apologies, by the way. Apologies to Marianne Williamson. She may also be on the side of working people. I'm not buying that RFK Jr. is. I'm not buying a guy who supports crypto is. I'm not buying a guy who won't say that he will raise taxes on the rich is on the side of the working class. I'm not buying it. But I think Marianne Williamson's heart probably is in the right place, even though she clearly made a lot of money as a charlatan. She made her name as a charlatan, spiritual advisor, all that nonsense. Dr. West is the real deal. Support Dr. West. So the catastrophe we face right now is twofold, is manifold, and it's by the way, it's two very, very connected crises: the climate crises and the economic crises that all but the richest are facing. So, economic injustice. And I do want to highlight a guy that I really think, I want to platform somebody, and I'm awfully, me, I'm so critical of the Dems, right? I'm constantly beating them up. I'm constantly, and I think fairly, I don't think I'm ever unfair to them, but they're to be, and I paint with a broad brush. I blame them all. And I've often been criticized. Well, how can you? They're not all the same. Joe Manchin isn't Bernie. Well, Bernie isn't a Democrat, but he pretty much is now. But, Joe Manchin isn't AOC. But AOC and Jared Huffman and my Congress member, Jamie Raskin, all voted for the Congress member from Wall Street and AIPAC, Hakeem Jeffries, to be the minority leader, and he indeed carried water for the dirty debt ceiling deal, which many of those Democrats who were supposedly progressive voted for. Now, I didn't do my homework as well as I should have. I don't know if this guy voted for the debt deal or not, but he probably is my favorite Congress member at this point. This is Ed Markey. I introduced him at an event once. So there's a little bit of a personal history, which may or may not make me biased. Here's Ed on the strike, and this is where I'm, all on board with him. Oh, are we not hearing him? Let's see if we can get that clip up.
I'm here with all the SAG-AFTRA workers, the writers, the writers and all of the other workers that make sure that Hollywood works, that our entertainment works. No writers, no actors, no Hollywood. So that's where we are. And this is just an incredible group of people who represent the best of our country, and they are doing everything they can to make sure that they have, in fact, made it possible for working people to get what they need in order to have working wages for their families. So congratulations, everybody. Thank you for what you're doing, and we're going to stick with you. So stay strong. You will win this fight. Yes, thank you. You will win this fight.
All right, so I want to give Ed Markey a lot of props. I definitely wanted to platform him for doing that video. Remember when Obama said, if you elect me president, I'll put on my walking shoes, and he didn't? There was a teacher strike in Wisconsin. He stayed home. Ed did walk the walk there. I give him a lot of credit for that. AOC, when the Amazon workers were on strike, she didn't join him. So I give Ed a lot of credit. Like all Democrats, he's not going to go as far as I would want him to go, but he's doing something, man. He's there. He's there on that picket line. And I'll tell you another area where Ed, unlike just about everyone else, I think deserves a heck of a lot of credit. By the way, I just want to let you know I'll be on for another 15 minutes or so, probably. So I do want you to call in. It's not like you can't. 240-363-7190. And I want even more than that you call in, although I want you to call in. I've said this before. I pay $20 for that line. So you might as well take advantage of my largesse that every month I pay $20 to get to be able to talk to you. But I want even more that you click subscribe if you haven't yet. And we are seeing the numbers go up. So that's awesome. Record global surface temperatures. We showed this chart yesterday. I haven't expanded it. I assume we're still seeing it every day. Every friggin' day is hotter than any other calendar day, the same calendar day ever. Since we've been keeping track, and it does now look like, based on what climatologists are telling us, this is the hottest the planet's been in 100,000 years. Just a massive heat wave enveloping us. And I want to give, like I said, this is not just about me. This is about also Ed, right? Ed Markey. So Ed Mackey. So here's Ed. Again, I'm giving him so much credit for this. Let's see. There we go. Let's play this clip. This is Ed on the Senate floor. And you won't hear a lot of people in Congress who speak like this. And we were down there yesterday, right? Trying to get I was with Climate Defiance, not yesterday, right? It's Wednesday. We talked, though, to one of the Climate Defiance leaders, awesome Jay Waxy. So here's Ed on the Senate floor. And again, I want to really platform this guy because I think he gets it. And you can see from that white hair there, he's no AOC, right? He's not in his 30s. He's not that Jared Huffman who's maybe in his 40s. Ed's probably in his mid to late 70s, I'm going to guess. Here he is.
Extreme heat isn't a coincidence. It's the climate crisis announcing its arrival. We did this. We did this to ourselves. Humankind's greed and negligence, America's greed and negligence is creating a literal hell on earth.
All right, so that's really strong language. And I love he talked about greed and negligence, and I also love that he talked about a hell on earth. I wish he specifically called out the oil and gas industry. He may at some point, I have not watched this clip from beginning to end. He spoke, and again, Ed's about the best Democrat there is. But again, he doesn't go as far as I'd like. But this is the kind of language we need from our representatives.
Right now, we're living through it. We took a first step last year to pass climate and clean energy legislation that will inch us closer to salvation.
All right, so he says inch us closer to salvation there, and I didn't want to play too much clip because I got another one I want to get to. Inch us closer, but he acknowledges it's not enough. Even that's not clearly not enough. So let's get to the second clip where Ed really, again, speaks truth. He's power, but he's speaking truth to the rest of the power in Congress.
We have to listen to the young people in our country. They are warning us. They are saying that they have been let down, that their generation has been left with this crisis, that not enough has been done, that the preceding generations just enjoyed all the benefits of industrialization, and now this generation of young people who are organizing, who are lifting their voices, who are demanding a change, they understand this issue. They understand this issue better than preceding generations because they are living with the consequences of not dealing.
All right, yeah, of not dealing with it. So, two really strong clips, and you can go to Forbes and find it. Again, Ed really does speak with a moral clarity that seems so absent from just about everybody else in government. And so I give him a ton of credit. Bernie often says the right things too. I wish Ed was a little more willing, but again, nobody's going to be where I want him to be, and that is to just call out the duopoly. Doesn't quite get there. That's what and frankly, that's the reason more than any other that I support Dr. West, because ultimately, even our very best U.S. senator, or our two very best U.S. senators, can't quite bring themselves to go after the Democratic Party. They just can't. And the Democratic Party itself is a huge part of the problem. Biden's approved more drilling permits than Trump, the same period of time. Biden jammed the dirty debt ceiling deal through Congress. And if you say, well, that's not really the fault of AOC, that's not really the fault of Raskin, that's not the fault of Ed Markey, my response is, well, Raskin and AOC voted for Hakeem Jeffries. Raskin voted for the dirty debt ceiling deal. They didn't stop it. They could have. They had ample opportunities beforehand to take action, and they didn't speak out nearly vocally enough as they should have. So I'm not going to give them excuses. I'm not going to give them a pass. If we had a Green Party, a viable Green Party, I think you'd see a lot more boldness from those representatives whose hearts really are in the right place, including Ed Markey. That's going to do it for me. Have a great weekend. A little bit shorter today. Just felt like getting my weekend going a little earlier than I usually do. Don't forget, click like, click subscribe. I'll talk to you Monday.